Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General is an incredibly critical part of our democracy. And so when an individual calls the Auditor General's integrity into question, which happened just now in this House, is an attack on our democracy. Simply, her only offense was not supporting and endorsing Liberal waste. Will the Minister apologize?
Monsieur le Président, pendant que nos collègues d'en face parlent de gaspillage, parce qu'on a investi dans 13 programmes pour aider les Canadiens pendant la pandémie.
Apparemment, il y a un problème avec la traduction. Est-ce que vous...
Can you hear me in English? It's working? Okay.
Redonnez, écoutez-moi parce que...
Okay, we'll give the floor back to the minister, and you can hear me now. The interpretation is working. We'll ask the minister to answer the question, and we'll listen quietly. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I said that while our colleagues opposite were talking about waste in the 13 programs we implemented during the pandemic, on this side of the House, we can say that we saved lives. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm not going to apologize for a government that saved lives. And what's worse, the opposition is willing to play petty politics at the expense of children. It's shameful.
For Northumberland, Peterborough South. Mr. Speaker, it wasn't the opposition that called out $32 billion in waste. That was the Auditor General. And my question again is a simple one. Will she retract her comment calling into question the independence of the Auditor General? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said a little earlier, the agency does not agree with the Auditor General's calculations when it comes to ineligible recipients for the CERB. The agency's checking reveals that the Auditor General's figures were exaggerated. It's not the Auditor General's fault. She was under a lot of pressure from the opposition, and these political games should not be tolerated. The CERB saved our economy. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Nowhere in the Auditor General's report did she question anything about having not enough time to produce her report. The report does not accuse the opposition of having pressured the Auditor General. To hide her own incompetence, the Minister of National Revenue today has questioned the integrity of the Auditor General of Canada in her report on pandemic spending. She should apologize. Will she, right now, yes or no? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue, of Heritage.
À l'ordre.
Order.
Laissez savoir quand vous êtes prêt.
Let me know when you're ready.
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We fully respect the Auditor General and what we wanted to say.
Pardon me, she absolutely agreed with us that we met the objectives of this plan. We kept Canadians safe, we put money in their pockets quickly, and we avoided significant economic and social harm.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, this Parliament asked the Auditor General to investigate pandemic spending and how the government managed the pandemic. This Parliament asked for the Auditor General to shed light, not the opposition, this Parliament. And today in the House, the Minister of National Revenue, in order to cover up her own incompetence in managing the crisis, accused and questioned the Auditor General of Canada's integrity. Mr. Speaker, there's just one thing for the Minister to do: stand up and apologize in this House. The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I have a lot of respect for the Auditor General. It's the opposition who are questioning the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, our government decided, and it was a crucial decision, to support businesses and workers through the pandemic. I'm sorry, it's hard to hear the answer.
Je vais demander à l'honorable
I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister to start over. But before that, I would ask all members to calm down a little bit. Everyone's excited, we know that. But they should calm down a little bit and take a little bit of time, take a breath. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to say that the Auditor General, I have a lot of confidence in her, and she has all my respect. Our government took the crucial decision to support people and businesses through the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, 13 programs were put in place. We saved lives with those programs, Mr. Speaker, and I will never apologize for saving lives during the darkest times since World War II, Mr. Speaker.
The government is attacking the Auditor General's independence in order to cover up their own incompetence. $30 billion, more than $30 billion, went to ineligible recipients, that is, people who did not meet the criteria of the programs. When the Auditor General called this out, the government's response is to criticize the work of a strong, independent professional who they, in fact, appointed. So will the Minister of Revenue apologize to the Auditor General and agree to accept all of her recommendations?
the Honourable Minister of Tourism.
We respect the Auditor General and welcome her report. But, Mr. Speaker, let us actually take a look at some of the...
I want to remind the honourable members that the rules are you ask the question and then you wait. You don't keep asking the question over and over again. The Honourable Minister from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, let me state once again that we thank the Auditor General for her report, that we respect her work, but let's look at what her report said. The pandemic benefits prevented an increase in poverty that would almost have doubled without our investments, helped the economy bounce back from the effects of the pandemic. CERB allowed 8.9 million Canadians to be supported through the depths of the pandemic, and the wage subsidy kept 5 million people on the payroll. We've already recuperated $2.3 billion, Mr. Speaker. The system will continue to work, and we will continue to have the backs of Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Battleford's Lloydminsters.
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General did take a look, and more than $30 billion in payments went to ineligible applicants. So we know in this House that the Auditor General is a respected officer of Parliament. Yes. It was this Parliament that asked for the report from the AG. The Minister is now calling into question the independence of the AG. Will the Minister apologize?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Speaker, we thank the Auditor General for her report. We worked closely with her to make sure she had all the data she needed to make her findings. And we are working hard on the post-payment verification to ensure that we work with individual Canadians. Over 150,000 Canadians have already worked out agreements with CRA for payment. And Mr. Speaker, we will continue methodically pursuing this work until it's done.
Good job.
The Honourable Member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that definitely was a non-answer. They say that they worked with the Auditor General, but they won't accept the recommendations from the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, will the Minister of Canada Revenue Canada, stand up and apologize for her remarks that seem to be that her government does not trust the Auditor General and the work that was done?
The Honourable Minister.
Our government trusts and respects the work of the Auditor General. And, Mr. Speaker, let me just share with you
Are we done? Very good. The Honourable Minister, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, let me repeat that our government respects and honors the work of the Auditor General and that we take a report. And let me share, Mr. Speaker, point 1023 from the report, and I quote, "We found that the COVID-19 programs achieved their objective to help Canada avoid a more severe contraction of the economy and the social consequences, for example, a significant increase in poverty. This financial support allowed the economy to rebound and return."
The Honourable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mary called me on a weekend. She's a senior on a fixed income, and her doctor is 230 kilometers away. She can't afford to fuel inflation. The Auditor General today revealed $32 billion in questionable spending, including $54 billion to build a $250,000 app, billions in wage subsidy to wealthy corporations, and issuing checks to prisoners and organized crime. Mr. Speaker, will the minister apologize for questioning the independence of the Auditor General?
Great question.
The Honourable Minister for Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize the challenges that seniors are facing, and our government has been there for them. Mr. Speaker, unlike the party opposite that has opposed every single measure that we put forward to support seniors, whether it was making sure doubling up the GST credit, which will help 11 million people, rental and dental support, Mr. Speaker, increasing the old age security by 10% for those 75 and over, Mr. Speaker, or the fact that we're increasing the guaranteed income supplement that has helped over 900,000 seniors, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue to make sure we support seniors now and into the future. Thank you.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, what we've heard today from the Minister of National Revenue questioning the Auditor General's integrity, that's one thing. But the finding was that this is the worst mismanagement since World War II. Will the minister stand up and apologize on behalf of all the soldiers who died in World War II? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we thank the Auditor General for her report and we respect her work tremendously. But let's look at some of her findings. Our supports during the pandemic prevented an increase in poverty. 8.9 million Canadians were helped to get through the pandemic, and with the wage subsidy, thousands of Canadians were able to save their jobs. This is what we did on behalf of Canadians, and it was the right thing to do. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, I'm very disappointed by the Minister of National Revenue's lack of courage. The member for Gaspésie, I would invite her to apologize on behalf of all the soldiers. They were brave soldiers. Will the minister from the Gaspé show as much courage as those soldiers, stand up and apologize on their behalf? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to reassure my colleague that if there are people with courage out there, it is definitely people from the Gaspé and the Magdalen Islands. We have worked very hard to ensure that people who got COVID benefits were eligible, and we have a strategy of auditing and cost recovery. And this report simply confirms that our estimates were correct, Mr. Speaker.